Hello. I think I'm live. Hi, it's David. Brilliant. There we go. Thank you, Alison, for the heads up. Right, just you are live. I don't know if those who came to one of our previous lives and we realized we weren't live at all, and I was on mute for the first 20 minutes. So today we're not going to have that problem. Thank you for joining us for one of our our second live about reinventing employee voice. Right? Why listening to employees needs a makeover. Now, in the course of this session, what I hope to do is, I guess, make the case for a reinvention of employee voice. Why do we need to do that? And of course, I'm going to show you what we're doing. You may have seen in the ad that we placed for this that we're going to do a demo. Now, at the end, I'm going to invite you all to join us on Zoom for that, because I've discovered I can't do a live demo and see the screens on both things at the same time. So what we'll do is we'll head over to Zoom at the end for those who want to come and see the platform itself. But let's start, I guess, with some situation context. Where are we? The last week has seen two really interesting bits of press, if you like, around this whole topic of employee voice. On the right-hand side, as I look at it, as we all look at it, I guess, State of the Global Nation, Gallup's annual disengagement report, where it talks about what's going on with people, how stress is on the up, burnout is on the up, engagement is declining again. And I think, we first started talking about engagement through the Gallup report. I mean, they've been doing this for years, but 2015, 2016, the numbers were bad and they're getting worse. On the left-hand side, we've got the New York Times article, which some of you may have seen, which is why is assessing job satisfaction so hard. So they're both talking about similar issues. The New York Times, of course, amid layoffs and a change in workplace, worker stress is at a record high, and engagement surveys become more frequent at high tech. What are companies missing? And I think that's the thing we're talking about, isn't it? With billions of dollars or pounds have been spent over the years on these issues, and things don't appear to be getting better. In fact, they seem to be getting worse. And compounding them, I think, is a set of stuff, external context for us that is making life difficult for us, and certainly shining a light on the way that we're looking at some of these subjects. So the world has changed, right? COVID has had a dramatic impact on our workplaces, the way we work. The where we work, those sorts of things have all changed dramatically. We're working from home more, so we're no longer seeing people in the offices as much as we were. Burnout, as you've talked about, is a set of one topic that's relatively new to the way we're thinking about work. We've got other things too, right? We've got DEI, the blurred lines between home and work. We've got, I guess, that the impact of that being the overwhelming sense that we have of not being able to turn off. There's a whole set of stuff, isn't there, that we know. And of course, the bottom right here, our workplaces are empty. So we're losing connection and relationship. And sort of cultures are starting to atomize. And things like isolation and loneliness creep into our workplaces like they never have before. The current system, we don't think, is helping. I think I'm not about to bash surveys, but I am about to talk about the fact that they're not doing the job we need them to do in the right way. Right. So they're not, firstly, we have to talk about the fact that our primary source of listening employee voice is really not that much about employees' voices anymore. It's a reflection of questions that we want to ask them, stuff that I want to hear from them that I'm going to ask. Right. they're not building trust, that they're part of a broken system that are actually encouraging and promoting, I guess, the sort of exacerbation of disengagement and disillusionment with work, right? So, um, what's wrong with them? Well, so I've talked about before, they're not really giving us employee voices in the way that they should. So we're hearing responses to questions that we're setting, right? They're bloody slow. Let's be clear. There's nothing that we can get from a survey that is as quick as other information we use in work, and we need to address that. I'm probably really interested in the big image on this one, the squeaky wheel syndrome, right? So one of the reasons I think they create disengagement is we fill in, we all do. Well, Harkn does it, right? We use surveys in Harkn, not very much, I should say, but it's in there. That I agree, I disagree with subjects, and the things that our voices get heard in is the one that most people also agree with, right? So what we end up with then is we're only fixing the stuff that enough people talk about. And I think if we just contrasted that with them with customer voice for a minute, this obsession with enough employees giving us feedback about something versus a single customer tells us something about a process is broken, we treat that as a proxy, and we don't look for appropriate representation or similar. That we can deal with it differently with its customers. We don't do that with employees. You said we did. Another thing that is a particular favorite of mine. No, not this. Again, this is not to say we shouldn't do this, but we're doing an awful lot of work, aren't we, as a result of employee engagement surveys? And so why isn't the dial moving? And I think it's because, back to the squeaky wheel thing, we're not feeling like the changes that are coming, the top-down changes from survey, is not affecting me. It's not making my life different. And that's telling us that we're not hearing people properly, right? That you're spending time, money, and energy on trying to improve the workplace based upon the methods that you're using to hear what people have got to say, making appropriate adjustments, and that's not moving the dial. But there's something broken in that system, right? And the last little bit at the bottom right, danger. Well, anonymous. I spoke to somebody recently about anonymity, and he said, in my company, you'll have a real problem convincing them that Harkn is anonymous because we do anonymous surveys, and then immediately followed with that hint of irony to say, but they're not really anonymous. I get told who says what. And I just thought that's, that there is no wonder that we have a problem with trust. We don't allow that, by the way. But there's a different way to think about it. And I think the start point here is, so we got some context I'm trying to set that says, look, the world's changed from where we were. We all need things faster. Employees want to have their voices heard like never before. We've got some new issues to address. And the tools that we use are compounding the problem. But what if we reframed the issue, right? So I've talked about I guess the trust that we're breaking in the way that we're listening to employees at the moment. We're not really listening. But if we reframed that and saw engagement as a relationship building process, would that change the way we thought about it, right? So actually considering value, employee voices, our words here, employee voice should be about valuing the voices of your employees, allowing them to speak freely about their perspectives and actively listening to them. Then that's how you'll build a positive and productive work environment where every employee feels connected, valued, and engaged. And I think that's right at sort of heart of what we're trying to do with listening. Right? You say, well, actually, we need to find ways that make it okay for people to share what's going on for them in a sort of grown-up way, right? So making it safe and easy for people to share their feelings, opinions, ideas, and feedback at work. And a great deal of that, I know we're trying to get at through other mechanisms, but we need to dial into something different. Real-time employee voice gives us a different way of doing that. So I'm going to talk now. I want to sort of share a little bit about Harkn and our approach to this, because this really is about saying, well, if reinventing employee voice, we've made a case for it. Let's hope you agree with that part, right? What's different about us? How do we do it differently? So and I'm going to sort of just pause for a minute and just talk a little bit about where we come from in this process, right? And a bit of our journey, because we haven't got here in 5 minutes. We've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, and it's been a relatively painful journey in many respects, right? It's a difficult job learning how to listen differently in organizations, right? But Harkn came about I mean, go back to where we started. In response to the idea that we didn't know enough, we were a consulting firm that working with organizations that didn't know enough about their cultures, right? They all relied on periodic surveys. I've talked enough about them already, but line in the sand here and a line in the sand there. And we set out with a check-in routine, which is largely what I'm showing you now, that says, how do you feel right now? Now, we started, I'll say this once and then you've got to forget it, right? We started as Happiness Lab, but we're no longer known as that. And right at the heart of that was this sort of idea that it's about people's happiness. And it sort of is, but we've kind of grown on beyond that and what we've learned. So this simple daily check-in routine, how do you feel today and why do you feel that way? What's different about Harkn today from where it is now is the sophistication of what happens as a result. So I'm showing a few things on here. So that one check-in routine takes 30 seconds to do. It's a 0 to 100 scale, but we do three things, right? Firstly, how do I feel? Well, we're normalizing that data and turning it into a live sense of morale, motivation, mood in individuals, right? So imagine a 0 to 100 scale and 20 people all rate 50. We can tell the difference in the quality of their days based upon the data we hold about them, right? And that's really powerful because that's starting to give us a sense of the individual experience, right? So that's invaluable information to leaders, and that evolution from Happiness Lab into Harkn for us has also seen us talk much more clearly now with managers about what we're all trying to do here is create more good days and fewer bad days. And that's expressed in the way we calculate that data, right? So that you're actively looking. We're all on this continuum, every one of us, right? Life is like this. We want to have more good days at work and fewer bad days, and clearly we want to stop people slipping over time. And that's the second part. So that live check-in, Harkn performs a well-being check on every rating that goes into the system. So it's looking at that individual, doesn't know who it is, of course, it's just a user with a data package, and then saying, okay, is this rating normal for this person? Does that person seem to be okay? And where it doesn't, it puts up an alert inside the system, again, without ever revealing the identity of anybody. And we could talk about that in a bit, how we do that. But that's giving leaders a real dramatic sense of comfort, if you like, around knowing that people are okay. We see people considerably earlier, and I will just do the backstory. I know that people who've been around Harkn for a while will know this story, but that came in 2019. There was an incident. It was a moment in one of our clients where somebody had checked in and left a comment, which is the sort of third part of our check-in routine, saying, and it was a rating of 5. So again, just to remind you, 0 to 100 scale starts at 50. You choose to go one way or another. A rating of 5, and that's sort of obviously quite low. And the comment that accompanied it was, worried about the future. I don't know how I can afford to pay for the funeral, let alone get my family to it. I guess mum could have picked a better month to die, right? That was a difficult thing to read. And back in 2019, we didn't have the sophistication that we do today. We had to dig into code to find a package of data about that person so we could work out what was happening. And what we saw was 5 or 6 weeks prior, she was unremarkable in our terms. So rated most days between 60 and 70, talked about life, right? So sometimes work, sometimes home, sometimes stuff in the middle. But it was, life was okay. And then mother got poorly and she dropped into the 50s. And a week or so later, work changed. Her company changed a shift allocation process that had a broad effect. So affected lots of people. It basically created uncertainty for this particular person. It was a lady in the US. And then we watched her in straight line decline over this period of 4 or 5 weeks, where she, so it was a combination of financial insecurity and uncertainty and declining mother's health, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, teen single figures. And we knew at that point, of course, that we could see decline in an individual in our data, albeit looking backwards, and set out at that point to build the algorithms that would get ahead of it. Today, because of the way I've just described this check-in routine, we would have picked that up inside the second week. Now, of course, there's nothing Harkn could do about, or the employer that could have done anything about that lady's mother. But certainly the compounding impact of financial insecurity was certainly within the gift of people. And that's the sort of information that we would bring to light much, much sooner. So, and the third part of our check-in routine is this live and continuous employee voice and feedback, right? So this free-form comment that follows the thing you can see right now. So why do I feel the way I feel, and what's incredibly powerful about this is we're no longer telling people what they have to share. We're not asking for a response to a question about what do you feel about your boss? How do you feel about your feedback? How do you feel about the coffee? We're saying, how do you feel? And tell us what's going on for you. And what we see over time with Harkn is a dramatic shift in the sophistication and maturity with which people approach that. So if you're a Harkn user, you will, well, if you were a Harkn user, you'd know how your employees felt, right? And as things move, as they do, right, you'd see them, um, the mood of your camp change. You'll see real life happening for everybody. So that's this sort of multi-purpose, simple daily check-in. So it takes 30 seconds to do and delivers a significant amount of value. To emphasize that, here's a timely quote from one of our clients. Right. Harkn takes me directly to the front line, allowing me to hear firsthand how people are, both in terms of morale and well-being. Now, Ian McKenzie, Chief Operations and Technology Officer at St James's Place, a FTSE 100 company, a terrific leader as well. And listen, any one of our clients will tell you you have to be a courageous leader to take something like Harkn on, because it opens up employee voice in a totally different way. But I've got a giant helicopter flying overhead, so if you get vibration, forgive me. Right, the Chinooks are active around here today. But Ian talks about that, and I think from. Did you all hear that? Right there. Sorry, that was bloody low. Right. The yeah. So Ian took Harkn on really early in the pandemic. So we need to know how our people are doing. We can't see them; they're at home. I want to get a sense, and then has been on the journey with us from April 2020, where we've seen life happening through his organization, from deaths of key members of staff during COVID to big moments that affected large populations, and what Ian would tell you is that it can be brutal at times, but it does take him very hard. The more senior he's become, the harder it is to hear unfiltered truth. It's not that people are lying to them, but I get a dressed up version, right? And I want to go right back to the shop floor and hear how my people feel, and I get that from Harkn, and I think that's a very mature outlook for him. But it's now he's been with us a while and doesn't look. I keep my fingers crossed. He doesn't appear to be wanting to go anywhere, so we're in a good place. Now let's talk about live and continuous employee voice and feedback and this real-time engagement. And so I mentioned before, right, that we are seeing a dramatic difference in the way that people engage with a tool like Harkn, and that's added to in the voices of our clients in terms of leadership. So this originally in our first version was static. I can't believe why we built a product that was static in this respect. So you just shared a comment and you couldn't do anything with it. And then people said, can we go to the like button? And then can we get some other reactions, because I don't like liking people having a bad day and right. And then, but you wind the clock forward to the 2023, and we have a place where people clearly feel safe. So we've done that hard work of building trust in Harkn. So completely anonymous, and you can't really see in the image, I don't think, very well, but there's no avatars or anything. So what we present is a rating and a comment, so a bit like the blown up versions here, right? And so that's the only way of, that's a person and their rating of the day. So this is how I'm feeling, and this is why I'm feeling that way. Completely interactive, so I can reply, I can share reactions and emojis, those sorts of things that all have an impact on the way we're feeling, on their ability to feel connected. But what we've seen change is engagement being done differently, right? So again, rather than thinking about it as a sort of we hear what people say and then deal with it later and come back and tell you what we're doing. One of the best things we're observing now is with one of our clients recently, they were doing road shows, right? They're out talking about strategy for the year ahead, what's going to change. And then within an hour of them being out in their regional talks, we'd see the wall light up with the sort of people who were there talking about how they felt about it, right? So their ratings would reflect their mood, and their narrative would be like, I'm really excited. Look, like, it's great to hear the exec sharing the strategy today. And then you'd see every now and again another comment saying, well, I'm not so comfortable with the strategy. I didn't get it, or it didn't land with me very well, or I'm worried about it. And then let's say 30 minutes, an hour later, you'd watch one of the exec appear. Hi, it's David. Obviously, they're not called David. That's my name, but they'd say their name. Hi, it's David. I'm sorry that didn't land so well with you. Thanks for the feedback. I'd like to hear more about why or what you're concerned about. My door is open, but I know that can be intimidating. So talk to me on here where it's anonymous, right? And that's a really mature use. But what that's doing is it's telling people that they're heard live. That I think when I talk about real-time engagement or live engagement and engagement as a relationship building process, that's it happening right there. So I can, power distance stops me from feeling safe enough to give you feedback, right? But if I can get that out and you engage with that in a grown-up, respectful fashion, then our trust is going to build, right? Every interaction we have is going to build or diminish trust. And I think that's an incredible sort of evolution as we've seen the way people are getting used to this product. The right-hand side shows another version of what happens with the wall. Again, that anonymity and safety promotes the idea that people can share sensitive stuff. And that, so I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. I could have picked 1,000 comments that convey something similar, but perhaps some would be, quite detailed. What's incredible about this particular thing is people saying, I'm struggling, I'm having a difficult time, right? We know that actually when it comes to revealing ourselves in that respect, we don't like doing it very early. We'll wait until we're in crisis to tell other people. That's sort of well proven. But just putting out, I'm having a difficult day, and my colleagues like this, mocked up version, are you okay? Would you like to talk to somebody? Or, the emoji that I resisted for longest, the hug emoji, actually has a dramatic impact on people. I feel connected. I feel like my colleagues care about me. They listen. These things matter more than we possibly imagine. And this isn't like Twitter or Facebook or any of those sorts of things. You're on the same team. These are colleagues sharing some stuff about their experience, as they're feeling it. We've got examples of people talking, one person in one of our clients who's clearly a lady who's having a very difficult time at home at the moment. And every day, and I know that her colleagues are picking this up because she's getting a lot of support, but she's using that anonymity to talk about that aspect of her life, because we can't leave that at the door when we get to work. It's with us, right? So using colleagues for support and kindness. So I think these are really important things. And out of here, we're democratizing employee voice with the wall. So it's not just responding and reacting. We can put up flags for people. I'm worried about somebody, create a well-being case, a bit like the example I mentioned before. And I'm going to talk about that in a second in more detail. We can put up flags and say we want to talk about this. In fact, we've recently launched a thing called team rooms, which again is trying to take that second level of questions. Clients have often come to us. Most of our clients use engagement surveys as well as Harkn. So they have their sort of line in the sand every now and again. They get their benchmarks. But often they'll come to us and say, can we find out what people feel about this? Right? We've asked a question about leadership communication and we don't understand the result. It's declined and we don't know why. So what could we find out? And so we built this thing called team rooms, which basically becomes a directory of topics the company wants to understand more about. Right. And this company, it could be people of course, it's people in the company, it isn't the company, but it's, and then I've got something to contribute to that discussion. And then it's like a completely anonymous focus group that might run for a month, asynchronous conversation about these hot topics. Right. What do we want to hear about? And that's brilliant because suddenly we start to move away from how do you feel about leadership to saying, look, leadership communication is important. How do you feel about that? Right. And then you have a dialogue. And you're protected and you're anonymous and you can respond and leaders can participate in that discussion and say, well, do you read all the stuff we send? Because we always send the communication out. And you say, well, no, I'm too busy to read that. And so there's a lot of stuff like that we start to enable. And I think that becomes an exciting sort of evolution. But all of this stuff can be taken from the walls. You take a thread, a conversation that you see people get excited about and move it into a team room and take it further, right? So there's a lot of stuff we can do with, as I say, this is live and continuous employee voice and feedback. All aspects of life, as I would call it, inside your company. And then there's this example, right? Now this is, I'm sort of taking this slight risk. This is sensitized data, but stuff that you never hear about. This is a sort of slightly doctored. So we've just taken out the things that are revealing the people. A conversation that took place on the wall in one of our clients, right? And it is somebody saying that I'm one of the 45%, these are the different numbers in this company who are over 40. And today is one of those days where overwhelm and various other symptoms, basically this is a conversation about menopause, right? And then people, what we saw happen here, so there's a couple of examples here, but so people talking about menopause, being perimenopausal, and then of course the questions that were coming in from other people saying, tell me a bit more about this, and the reason I put this in is I could have picked another dozen examples of topics that are difficult for people to talk about, right? But again, anonymous, safe place to come and talk about stuff and to share awareness. This is where we start to see people feeling included in work, right? I think that's, that equal voice. It's the other thing that, the anonymity thing does, right? You completely level out visible power distance. People can talk at all levels about the things that matter to them. Well-being monitoring and support features, right? So that story I mentioned before generates the algorithms, if you like, that leads us to launch in 2020. Effectively, the yellow bit at the top right here as we're looking at system alert. So this person might need some help, and it doesn't actually say that. It produces it generates an alert, creates a case. In the middle bit we're looking at there is some of the case management type system that underpins what we do, well-being center. So that's an incredibly powerful piece because it gets us to talk to people, we think probably 6 weeks prior to them finding, to wanting to talk about it openly. And we've built a private messaging feature, the orange bit at the bottom here. Hi, it's David from HR. So a private messaging feature. This is something we had to build during the sort of lockdown when we were seeing a dramatic increase in the number of people who were struggling. So the ability to reach out to somebody inside the platform and have a one-to-one conversation with them, a bit like a WhatsApp chat, where one side of the conversation is protected. So I want, it looks like you might be having a tough time. Harkn has put up a couple of flags. Would you like to talk to somebody? Or here are some resources. By the way, when you reply, I won't know who you are. You stay anonymous until you tell me otherwise. And we've applied that same logic to the groups that I was talking about before. But this is a game-changing bit of technology because what it's meaning for us is that we can get people to talk about stuff much sooner. And that leads us to the next stage of that, the little purple bit. I'd like to talk to somebody privately, right? So once you've established safety, and I'm checking in regularly, I'm noticing what's going on for me. I'm maybe a bit more conscious of some stuff. We added this raising my hand feature. So I create a case about myself and make it urgent, right? So it puts a special flag up in the system and emails wellbeing agents in the organization. Somebody would like to talk to you, right? That takes us beyond straightforward wellbeing. And again, I think of well-being and whistleblowing as very similar psychological events. So I have to get so far down a process before I'm prepared to do it. And I think that often what that means is we've got no opportunity to manage anything. And I don't mean manage that in a mitigate fashion really, or to try to minimize the impact. But I think actually sometimes there are things going on that if we got to them sooner, they would not escalate in the way that they end up doing. Right? Well-being is one of those. Bullying could be another. If we saw these things earlier, if people felt more confident to say, look, I'm not sure if this is right, but I'm experiencing some stuff. And I'd like to talk to somebody about that. Can I just bounce that off you? Now, Harkn enables that conversation to happen where you're completely protected and safe to do that. So I might put my hand up and talk about that sooner. I think ultimately, of course, we all know that there's a point at which somebody would need to reveal their identity for many things to progress. But we get these access to these conversations much sooner in this method, right? So we know that works. And the green one, I think, is one of the things that we learned about. So it's the flags from the wall as we were looking at before, that sort of live and continuous narrative. I've seen something, I'm a bit worried about this person, and I put up a flag, right? And that creates a case, albeit as we describe them as a manual one. What's powerful about that, of course, is it's democratizing work responsibility for culture. It's sharing responsibility for one another. We care about each other at work typically. And I think, come back to the point I've made about putting my hand up. How do I, I'm not prepared to tell you that I'm struggling until I'm absolutely certain about it. The same is true of our colleagues, right? Nobody is putting their hand up for me if they think I'm struggling, because there are consequences, right? And they don't want to jeopardize. What if they're wrong, or they're, and whatever it might be, right? So that I don't want to be seen to cause trouble. So we're just waiting too long. Whereas this we leave anonymous as well, right? So I can put a flag up about somebody. We don't put any markers anywhere on the system to let you know that you've been flagged or somebody's flagged it, other than the places it needs to be. But this just says, look, so if you see something that you think needs action, you see something that needs escalating, or you're just concerned, put a flag up, let somebody go and look at the package of data that follows, right? And the little anonymous package of data, by the way, is trend data, publicly shared data by this individual, with no identifiers about them at all. And so it does things like, helps to risk evaluate whether somebody needs some support. And what we see from those things, and there's one set of data that we've got, and it's only one set, but because when we turned on the algorithms in 2021, February 2021, one of our clients, so it was just shy of 1,000 people, they had 379 alerts generated over the year, affecting about 180 people, right? So and then we looked at 2022, and you see 150 alerts affecting just under 80 people, right? And I think that that's a really interesting picture, because the algorithms didn't change. What we changed was what's changed is the way we engage. And I'm pretty, we believe, can't say this for certain, but we believe that part of that result is driven by the fact that we're reaching out to people sooner, we're stopping them in decline rather than when they get there. And I think people just feeling that bit more support, right? So, and by the way, all the other numbers, actually slightly more people in year 2 than there were in year 1. So we can't explain it by a declining population, for those who might wonder. All right. So I think it's interesting stuff, right? But certainly this is a really, really powerful feature for Harkn, and how we use real-time voice, including that rating process part of it, in a different way. Time for another quote, right? Mark Duckworth, CEO of Schroders Personal Wealth. Again, another terrific leader. Harkn allows us to hear in real time how our staff are feeling alongside specific factors driving this. It's cultural. I love this comment, by the way, because this cultural barometer is essential for a business where people define the success. And I don't know many businesses where the people don't define the success. But I just think that for him, when I talk to him about, how he finds the product and what he gets from it, that Mark uses the full suite really well in terms of, so yes, he's active on the wall, he reads the stuff that his employees are sharing all the time, but he's also tracking that sort of good day ratio, the sort of good and bad days that we talked about before, in a way that we've not seen previously. So really interested in the sort of balance of how hard, I guess, the organization is having to work and the impact that's having on people. So look, so we're half past. I didn't want to talk for too much longer than 30 minutes. I mentioned at the beginning. So we're going to put a Zoom link. If anybody would like to see the platform, we're going to move to a meeting where we could be a bit more interactive and maybe take some questions. I discovered the last time I tried to do a demo on a live LinkedIn Live, it just didn't go very well. So we're going to ask, if you want to join us, please come join us on Zoom, and we'll take this conversation and see what feedback we got, and I can do a live demo. All right. Thank you very much for joining. I hope that was informative, interesting. Please drop us a note in the comments if you have any feedback. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you soon, hopefully on the other side.